Hiya. So I've had a few people ask me now how I make my homemade cider. So instead of trying to explain to every single person how I make it, I thought it'd be easier to make a video, step-by-step video how I make my own cider. Here's one I produced earlier. This is a cherry cider. Lovely. So here's how I make my lockdown cider.
Like a Hellcat.
So then before we get started, you're going to need a few bits of equipment. Okay, but first of all, always must make sure when you're brewing, you've always got to brew to hand. Can't stress how important that is. So first of all, I've got myself a 5 litre glass demijohn. Right, I'm suspecting most of you won't have one of them, so if you don't, next time you're at the supermarket, get yourself a 5 litre bottle of water. Does exactly the same job. Okay, I've also got a hydrometer that measures the ABV of your alcohol. Now if you don't have one of them, which again I'm suspecting most of you won't, don't rush out and buy one, because if you follow this recipe you'll have the ABV anyway. Okay, so it's not vitally important to get yourself started, but if you do want to know your ABV, you are going to need one of them. Okay, I've also got my ingredients. Now because this is what I'm calling my lockdown cider, we're not actually making it from apples, we're making it from apple juice. I've also got some flavouring. Now if you go to the supermarket down your the Eastern European aisle, if you like, get yourself one of these syrups. They're fantastic for flavouring. They're about £1.50 a bottle. I've also got some lime juice, so tonight I'm going to make a raspberry and lime one. Now, when you're buying your ingredients, make sure that there's no preservatives in your ingredients. The syrup hasn't got none in. This lime juice has. Okay? So if you look on the ingredients, it will say preservatives. If it does have preservatives in, all you've got to do is boil it for 10 minutes. Okay? And then cool it down. So if it's got preservatives in like this lime juice does, boil it for 10 minutes. Okay? I've also got a turkey baster. That's just so I can get some brew out, just so I can measure my ABV. I've also got a cup of very strong tea. There's 2 tea bags in that. I've brewed it. This gives you what's called the tannins. It gives you the bite to the cider, if you like. So that's all my ingredients. You're also going to need some yeast as well. This one's from Wilko's. It's called the Expressed Wine Yeast Compound. Now this has got in it not just yeast, it's got what's called yeast nutrient in it as well. I can't speak tonight. It's also got yeast nutrient in it as well. You do need to put a bit of nutrient in. Although the yeast eats the sugar, that's what gives you the alcohol. A bit of nutrient in there, that will just help the yeast up. So before we get started, I just want to quickly go over about sanitising your equipment. Now, we all know that your equipment needs to be clean, but once it is clean, you do need to sanitise your equipment. Okay, it's very important. Anything that's going to touch the liquid needs to be sanitised. Now I use this stuff called VWP. Okay, this is it's a rinsing sanitizer. So basically you put the granules in some water, fill your demijohn up, or whatever you're using, or the plastic container. You leave it in there for 10 minutes, it sanitises it, cleans it, sanitises it, and then everything else, so the turkey baster, everything that's basically going to touch it, if you think it needs sanitising, it probably does. If you're not sure, sanitise it. It's better to sanitise absolutely everything than not to sanitise it, because if you get an infection in your brew, it's going to smell and it's going to taste horrible. Alright, so I cannot stress enough, everything that you're going to be using to make your brew, you must sanitise. Okay? Sanitise. So let's get to brewing. Start off, 1 litre of apple juice. Just pour it straight into your sanitised demijohn. Get it all in there. It is best if you have a funnel, because trying to pour it in without a funnel is an absolute nightmare. Trust me from experience. 1 litre. Next thing that I put in is my syrup. Should just put the cap out of this. Now, while I say when all your equipment needs to be sanitised, just make sure you sanitise your worktops as well. Just a bit of Dettol spray that I put down. Sanitise your hands. I'm sure we've all got hand sanitizer at the minute. So that's all the liquid in there. What I like to do next is take this cap out, which I've got in the first place. Just get a bit more apple juice. Just pour a little bit into the bottle. Give it a shake. Want to make sure you get all that syrup out. Awesome. Pour that there. Pour some more apple juice in. There we go, so far 2 litres of apple juice and then 400 ml of your syrup. Pour in your cold tea. So that's my tannin. Here's my lime juice. Don't forget, this one's been boiled because it contains preservatives. It's all been cooled down. So there's 200 ml. Well, actually, there might be a bit less because of evaporation from the boiling. Oh, should have got all that. So more apple juice. Now, when you're buying your apple juice, it can be cheap, it can be as expensive as you like. But what I will say is this: make sure it has sugar content. Without sugar, you're not going to get alcohol. So if you do find that you've bought some no added sugar apple juice, what you need to do is you need to add sugar. So just make sure it contains sugar, because it saves a whole lot of nightmare. Right. I'm going to pour my last apple juice in, but what I will say is save a right little bit at the bottom, because the funnel's wet. The yeast will stick to the funnel. You want all that yeast in there. So I've just saved a little bit in there. So with the yeast, you need about 1 teaspoon. Now this is a half teaspoon measure, so I'm going to put 2 of these in. So 1, 2. And that will be plenty enough for this brew. Again, if it doesn't contain yeast nutrients in your yeast, just buy some. I want a teaspoon of that in as well. Make sure that yeast comes off the funnel. So there we go. Funnel. So, because I'm using the glass one, I need to use an airlock. Basically, put your bum in, put your airlock in, fill it up with water, and it stops anything getting inside. Because this is going to produce carbon dioxide, it lets the gas come out, but it doesn't let anything come in. But first of all, what you need to do, give it a good shake. Giving it a good shake introduces oxygen, which is good for the yeast. But once that bit's done, you don't want any more oxygen getting into it. So I'm just going to fill my airlock up. Put the airlock in the bung. And that's the mixing. Right, we've got all that mixed. Quick slurp. Right, just a few things to finish off. So mine's got an airlock. Because I'm using the glass demijohn, it doesn't have a lid. If you're using plastic bottles, absolutely fine. You don't need an airlock. Right, so once you've got everything mixed in there, tighten the lid, give it a good shake, like you saw me do. Take the lid back off, put it back on and give it a slight turn. You want it locked, but you want it very loose. Because what happens is, once the yeast starts eating the sugar, it creates alcohol, but another thing it produces is carbon dioxide. So if you can imagine you've got that lid nice and tight on, the gas has got nowhere to escape, it's just going to burst. You're going to have your liquor all over. So again, just put your lid nice and loose on. All that does is it lets the gas escape, it stops anything getting inside. So that's if you're using the plastic bottles. Temperature. Once your yeast has been pitched, you want to try and keep it between, I'd say about 21, 25. Okay, so find a nice coolish, warmish room. If you know the room gets really hot during the day, then try and find somewhere cooler. If you know it gets cold on the night, I've seen people wrap it in a duvet, blankets. You can get heat belts. I've got a special fermentation fridge which maintains the temperature that I set it to. That's just me being posh, but I like my home brewing. So try and keep it around that temperature. The hotter it is, the faster it'll ferment, but a fast fermentation isn't a good thing. It can produce a lot of off flavours, a lot of nasty smells as well. So again, just try and keep it in that temp range. Okay. Also, don't be tempted to give it any shakes or anything like that. Once you give it that first shake that you saw me do, that's it. Any oxygen that's introduced into this after now will basically spoil your cider. So make sure nothing gets in there. What you're going to need for the next step, this is going to take about a week, 2 weeks to ferment. You'll know because there'll be you'll see the activity inside the brew. Another good way is if you do have a hydrometer, is pop it in and you'll get the same reading for 3 days in a row. You know it's fermented. If you don't have one of those, just give it about 2 weeks. Okay. What you'll also need is you'll need some bottles for the next step. 500ml bottles. I've got these flip top ones, which, let's face it, if you've not gone out and bought any, you're probably not going to have them in. So the 500 Coke bottles, Fanta bottles, anything like that, absolutely fantastic. So if you can get your hands on about 10 of them for your brew, you'll also need a siphon tube. Something you need to be able to get this out of the demijohn into your bottles. Okay, so you're going to need a bit of plastic tubing as well. So if you're going to go out to Wilko's or anything like that and buy some equipment, then make sure you get yourself a siphoning tube as well. If you haven't got one, just a bit, let's see if I can find mine, just 2 seconds. not digging around, it's late at night. Yeah, just a bit of plastic tubing. You all know what siphoning is. You need that because you need to take it off the sediment. It's going to produce what's called sediment. You'll see it all build up as it ferments. Okay, so I shall see you when this brew is fermented, and until then, take it easy, stay safe.